As the stars align, it's time for another Roll for Crit podcast, the official podcast for rollforcrit.com. Watch, shop, play. I'm Will Keeler.
I'm Jonathan Estes, and may the 9th be with you.
Yeah.
It is no longer Star Wars Day. I don't know if that was
or Cinco de Mayo.
No, it's not either of those things. So we missed the boat on both of those topical subjects. We could have done a full Cinco de Mayo episode with all the great Spanish and Mexican themed games.
There are a few. However, there are probably more Star Wars ones, and I know we got some Star Wars news coming around.
Well, Fantasy Flight, kind of, they are the premier Star Wars game developers in the board game industry, and they did not miss the opportunity to publish a bunch of Star Wars previews and announcements on actually some of them were like May the 5th, so, they aren't that much better than we are. But namely, they had, first of all, a big new expansion for Star Wars Rebellion, the first expansion, and what's interesting about this one is it's completely focused on Rogue One, which I guess makes sense, but you never know sometimes when something is brand new how long it's going to take them to get a game in gear to follow up on that.
Well, I do think also, I haven't played Rebellion. If I recall, it is sort of the 1v1 sort of almost a war game.
Yeah.
And I feel Rebellion, I mean, when we talked about the movie, I don't think we talked about it on the show.
Probably not.
But we felt like the Star Wars Rebellion movie, like especially the second half, sort of spoilers, I guess. I'm not really going to go in detail, but it does actually feel more like a war.
Spoilers, the Death Star gets created.
Well, I mean, you get very particular spoilers even for things that are like years old.
I know, but this is it doesn't.
So
I feel, not the time or place.
It sounds like Rebellion actually would fit really well. I mean, Rogue One would fit well with the.
Well, it is
Rebellion.
right in that time period. It's the original trilogy, and this is right before the original trilogy, so they're going before that. The actual thing is called Rise of the Empire, and there's going to be a bunch of new ships included. You got U-Wings, TIE Strikers, Nebulon B frigates. The other sort of new addition, it sounds like there's maybe a little more of a focus on combat in this mode. There's going to be a new tactics deck for each player, and before you fight, you're going to secretly kind of choose one and reveal it that can change the tides of battle, etc., etc. But yeah, it sounds like it makes sense. It would fit into that universe. Whereas...
You mean game mechanics?
I mean, the Rogue, it would fit into the universe of this game, I guess.
Because I was like, it is Star Wars. They are in the same universe.
Whereas the prequel trilogy would be sort of harder to... You'd have to really work from the ground up, I think, to make that make sense, because it's built around this Rebellion Empire thing that didn't really exist during that time period.
True, and I guess the other big thing, I mean, you pointed out that they're in the same time area. I mean, even Force Awakens, even though you have updated versions, it's still an X-Wing and a TIE Fighter. I mean, do we have anything close to that in the trilogy? I think we have an A-Wing prototype or something, but that's the closest thing, because the only ship I remember is either the pod racers and the
you just said original trilogy. You mean
prequel trilogy. And the
Naboo Starfighter.
Yeah, the yellow things.
The yellow things.
That's why I just remember these bright yellow ships.
The banana yellow space future chrome, perfectly round and symmetrical. But if you do want your prequel fix, they also announced a brand new expansion for Imperial Assault, which also has Empire in the name, I think. Heart of the Empire. Don't get them confused. Heart and Rise. Very easy to get confused. Which is going to take place on Coruscant. You will be searching for an artifact, at least if you are the Rebel players.
Rebels.
Yeah, and trying to find that. It's going to be accompanied by 3 new miniatures packs
which you can see.
You've got Maul, not Darth. It's just Maul.
Right. So I guess this is the show version of him. I have not seen the show, but judging by the picture, he's not the Empire Blue. He's green. Was it Bounty Hunter?
Probably, or Scum and Villainy.
Yeah.
One of those things. I think after the movie, he's not a Darth anymore because he's dead, but he comes back. I don't know. You've also got Palpatine and Ahsoka from the Clone Wars show. And there's going to be power tokens in this, which are things you can spend in battle to give you like an extra point of damage or something like that. There's also going to come with rules for 4-player skirmishes and new maps, so you can do either free-for-all or 2v2 team battles in skirmish mode.
That's definitely interesting considering. I know we haven't tried the skirmish mode yet. I know because our friend has it all, and we just haven't had a chance.
We're more interested, I think, at least I am, in the campaign aspect of it than just the battling also.
Right, but I mean that does make the miniatures, because I know that one of the big things in the miniatures is they actually give more for the skirmishing. I believe. Right.
Generally, they're like better versions of stuff that's kind of in the game.
Right, and anything that gives, you know, a chance for more players, that makes it easier to hit the table. Especially if you consider, like, because this is based on, you know, Descent, this is almost a campaign game. That, you know, if that one person doesn't show up, you can still play it.
Yeah, that's nice. It's not just a paperweight without your full group.
Like our friend does watch the show. I'm sure it's nice to sort of reach out to those. It's still canon, I'm pretty sure.
It is one of the few things that is still canon.
So to give that to the more I can't think of the loyal fans. I think is nice.
Yeah, no, it's cool that they're delving into that stuff. We used to talk about how they didn't really go into anything beyond the original trilogy, but that is no longer the case. They are going full on into the.
They finally like, we're out.
Yeah,
we can't do anything else.
They ran out of movies. They had to start using new ones. They're probably like super relieved that they're making a movie a year now because they're going to have content for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, and I mean, if you go into the shows too, I think that you can take advantage of them. I'm sure Fantasy Flight could be like, hey, we're trying to make a new ship for X-Wing, for example, and we need something that's more of a defensive ship. Is there any way you can maybe fit that into the story or somehow in the back, even in the background or something?
And Disney will say, no, do your job, we'll do ours. So you can look for both of these later this year. They sound pretty exciting, whether you're a fan of old or new, or old and new, which is Rogue One.
Now, speaking of games that we have enjoyed playing, back in last Gen Con, we got to see a lot of the new Dead of Winter stuff. We saw the new app. I don't think is out yet, but we're very excited for. But also a new competitive mode in which you can sort of combine the two. Would you call them cores?
Yes.
They're both cores?
2 core sets, yeah. And so they finally officially announced that. Of course, you know, like you said, if you watched our show, you got the scoop.
Yeah.
But it is going to be called Dead of Winter Warring Colonies. And as you said, it's interesting because if you have it as on its own, it will work as sort of a little expansion for either set. So it has new crisis cards, new characters, etc., new items. But if you do have both the original and the Long Night, that's when you can put them together to have a team-based game where 2 colonies are fighting, and it's up from 4 to 11 players. 11. And I'll explain why 11.
I have a feeling, but
yeah, you may have figured it out. But it's because one player has the option of being what they call the lone wolf, where you're on your own team and you're doing things in the background that will affect both of the other colonies. So essentially, the colonies are fighting over food and supplies. There are new combat rules, so you can actually fight each other. There's new cards and new dice to roll against each other. They haven't gone into complete details yet.
This will connect to the comic about the dog, right?
I think so. Yeah, what's with all this Dead of Winter news lately? They're really going at it. And they also tried to assuage any fears about there being 11 players by saying there will be new mechanics involving simultaneous turn actions and a sand timer to ensure that your game doesn't last for 12 hours.
Yeah, I mean, we know our group is bad, and in this game in particular, but we still love it.
Yeah, so it sounds really cool. I'm curious how big of a market there is for it, because to really get the full potential out of it, you do need to buy 2 $50, $60 to MSRP
I think
sets.
the advantage for it could be, you do have that.
I
first
do.
of all, I feel board gamers do sort of fit into that. Like, if you like one game, you sort of get all of it. But because they're both cores, what if I had one, you had one? Because we have different groups, so like we occasionally meet, but then one of us gets this, so then when we come together, we can do that.
That would be cool.
And like you said, it doesn't. If you don't have both, it still is a mini expansion.
True, right, exactly. I don't know. I don't remember if they said what the MSRP is, but I'm guessing not a ton, probably like $20 to $30. The only caveat I'd say to what you said is that I feel that The Long Night is really a superior version of the original base set. And I at least I think at this point that's the consensus. We haven't actually tried Long Night, but just from looking at the materials and stuff.
Counterpoint.
Okay.
The original one has the dog in it.
That is true. That is true. So yeah, it's interesting. But if you have a big group that loves killing each other with zombies in the background, it definitely sounds like a cool variant. I mean, we always talk about how the thing about Dead of Winter, that game, is like Walking Dead. You're fighting the humans and more than the zombies, or the lack of supplies more than the zombies. But it was never really a direct fighting each other full on. So, and I don't think there are any other games really like that, except maybe for a Walking Dead game probably does that.
That you mean where there's zombies involved, or
yeah,
where
your two colonies just fighting each other, and then there also are like outside elements that happen to be zombies.
They're sort of, but I don't think it like this, because I mean, first thing came to mind was totally blanking, the Portal game. It's
Portal.
No, but it's not zombies, but it's the Cry
Havoc?
Yeah, because there's the green.
True.
Like
right.
there are a
It's
couple games
different.
that have that, but once again, I just feel because when you bring it up, even when you in this game, really any good zombie genre, board game, movie, whatever, the zombies aren't as much the true threat as really other people. Mm-hmm. So it makes sense in this kind of scenario.
They're the metaphorical background noise.
But speaking of being very scared and very cold.
Yes, that's right. Boy, the segues just write themselves this week. We just got a little bit more news about that Thing board game.
You know that thing.
You know that thing? The Thing, Infection at Outpost 31. It's kind of fun to talk about, but most of this is details we're kind of gleaning from pictures. They still haven't, there's no rule book or anything specific, but you can see they revealed the board, and it does look like it's a pretty good replica of the layout of the Outpost in the movie. You're going to be playing as the characters from the movie.
Really?
Yeah, I know, crazy. And then there are some of the items that we got to see. You can get flashlights, Molotov cocktails, Petri dishes. There's also a blood sample deck, which it looks like is what tells you whether you're infected or not. So I'm not sure if how often you're going to have to take from that, because it seems like the movie you're going to be getting infected potentially as time goes on. That would be a win condition for the Thing.
And I'm sure we mentioned this before. I'm really curious to see this play out next to, I haven't played, but you did that one Betrayal. Because that really did sound...
I'm guessing it will be more polished and work better overall, since it's going to be a full game rather than one scenario. In Betrayal at House on the Hill, there's a similar scenario to this.
And you survived. You were...
It was pretty great. We also can see a bunch of looks like room effects, environment effects, I guess, where the power can go out in a room. Rooms can be destroyed. There's actually you can lose if too many rooms are destroyed, and there can be smoke and other stuff like that. So that sounds cool. That it seems like it's gonna feel more alive. Like you can actually affect things around you. I'm really excited because we didn't really know even. We had no idea what the board, if it was just going to be kind of...
Sitting around, not really a board, but more of resistance kind of.
Yeah, but seeing this, it looks like you really are going to be going to different rooms, meeting people in different areas, and more suspense will happen that way. I'm pretty excited after seeing these images. And there also appears to be dice rolling involved. So that's about the gist of what we know. We'll try not to cover too much every little thing in detail on here, but when it pops up, it's kind of fun. But we have more horrific board games coming our way, some of which may or may not be funded yet.
Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah, we are now heading into our Kickstarter Pickstarters, and this one in no way is affected because I just got Prey. This game alone actually works on a mechanic I talked about, I wanted to see.
But not with anything else? Just this game alone?
No, I'm saying this game has a game mechanic.
The joke is the title of the game is Alone. Yeah.
I just didn't want to acknowledge it.
That's why I had to explain it.
So we talked about Star Wars Imperial Assault. And as you know, it's all the characters versus the one mastermind. In this game, you have the one player plays as the engineer who's lost on the station versus up to 3 masterminds. Okay. So it's the 1v all, but reversed.
Got it. It's all v1.
Yes. With the masterminds being the all. And the way the game works is you are the, they use the engineer, but I think there's other, you can play as different ones, like there's an assassin, a medic and stuff. Possibly you can get them as allies. But the board, you can only see as far as your flashlight. So as you move, pieces will also go away. So you have to remember, like, the map, more like in a video game.
Huh, okay.
But you can turn on lights in areas and stuff, too. The masterminds will each actually choose their own deck that plays a certain way. And they'll react to you when you move. They can maybe see there's a monster here, because they have a full board, sort of like Spec Ops.
Got it.
So they see what the board's getting supposed to be. So they'll tell you what pieces go there. But you'll have radar. So if they do something, you'll be like, you'll hear a noise to your left or something.
Okay.
So you can try to avoid it, but you only have a certain amount of time and action points to spend. And you can turn on lights in which that could like really hinder the masterminds. And because there's multiple masterminds, but each have a different deck to play with, you can be like, all right, that one's taking the lead now, so I know that he's more of maybe a trap deck or maybe more of a cultists.
So are the masterminds actually like 3 individual characters?
Up to 3 individual, well, I think they're all working together, but they each have their own style.
Okay.
Like one can be more spawning monsters, one can be more turning off the lights and stuff.
Interesting. That definitely, that's the closest thing I can think of. The only time I can think of where you're doing something like that is Last Night on Earth, where you can have multiple zombie players. But yeah, the idea of, it seems like a different sort of headspace working together against one person, even though it's essentially the same thing.
It is, but the difference is I feel, and I like it because usually the one is like the GM, the mastermind who has the more information. In this case, really, it's the other way around.
Yeah, the one person is alone.
But what I also like is the 3, if you can play up to 3 as the mastermind. You can't do just 1v1.
Okay.
But if you do like the multiple, the fact that they each have their own deck and style, it's not all just like when we did Last Night on Earth, we have the same stuff, so really it's just how do we want to move them.
It's more like you're 2 people controlling one person.
Right, but like when you take the lead, you could be like, since I know you're the lead, like, okay, I know traps are coming this way. But if I take the lead, the person could be like, okay, he's going to spawn things or something.
Interesting, yeah. That sounds really cool, and it's definitely a cool theme and title.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like this is a perfect game for if you like Dead Space, Prey, BioShock. It feels like a video game more.
Yeah. It goes for $82 for the core set.
Lots of miniatures. I should also
as is standard now with these games. But maybe you really like BioShock Infinite. Then you might want to try out my pick for the week, which is Skyways, which is an Eagle Griffin Games title where you are placing buildings of different colors that are connected to different skyways and etc. But essentially what it is you have these little 3D building models, and there's a board of squares, and you draw them randomly, and they're different colors, and you want to basically match colors in a certain section to score points.
Right, and there's different linkings and stuff, and I believe there's capital buildings, and those give you points at the end depending on how tall they are. So it's sort of a push your luck and try to capture the taller ones early or later. Right.
The Capitol buildings you can place. They have to be at a certain height, and there can only be one Capitol building per color group, at least in an area. So you could also use that to sort of shut out your opponents. If you put ones, someone wants to score one, they can do that first. So that's basically it. It's pretty simple. It kind of reminded me of like. Almost like that, like Dots, the game where you have to try to get the squares, or even so like very simple, like even a Connect 4 kind of tic-tac-toe sort of a thing, where you're but much more in depth than that, but just trying to get points on the grid. The 3D aspect of it and raising things up is a nice visual touch. But it looks cool. These guys put out pretty good games. That's Skyways, and it goes for $39. And you can find both of those on Kickstarter now. We have links to them down below.
Now, we had separate busy weekends, but you actually got to play board games over your weekend.
I actually did, and I got a couple that we've been wanting to play for a long time, but we rarely have an opportunity to play two-player games. So for once, our friend Garrett and I got to sit down and play a couple of these. Of course, Garrett is very, very good at board games, so usually I would try to avoid one-on-one situations with him at all costs. But knowing that I would probably lose, as I did in both of these cases, I still went into it. So the first game was a little one you may have heard of, Twilight Struggle. Obviously it's a huge title. We've been wanting to play it forever. We finally sat down and kind of learned how to play it. I was the USA. He was the USSR. I mean, naturally, I was like, "You're clearly, you are Russia. just take that." And if you don't know, the game replicates the Cold War. It's basically territory control. You're placing influence tokens in different countries on the board. Whoever has the most influence there has control of it. And periodically throughout the game, you're going to be scoring certain regions and gaining points for how much control you have there. And you're also going to be playing cards. The cards will have points and events on them. And there are USA cards and USSR cards, but they all come from the same deck. So you could have a hand full of USSR cards and be the USA player. And what happens in that case is you would play it for the points, but the event would still take effect, which is usually beneficial to the other side. Okay. Whereas if it's your team's card, you have to choose the points or the event.
Okay.
The points you can spend on things like adding more influence and trying to take over countries. The events are usually based on historical fact, and they're like just an instantaneous, you get to do something cool or mess up the other player's turn. So it was really interesting because very often the case was, it was rare that you were doing something that didn't in some way also help your opponent, at least for some of the turns, and you're usually playing all your cards in the same turn that you have in your hand, or at least most of them. So it's all about deciding what order do I play them in, and how do I maximize the effect so that the things that help my opponent don't help him as much as they might at a different time. So kind of a weird headspace there. I definitely can see, and this is a game that you need to play through a bunch to really get the strategies down. It's something that, I mean, there are websites about this where people write guides to the different strategies in the game. There's a lot to take in, so the two of us being first-timers, I'm sure didn't understand many of the nuances.
I'm sure it only took them 2 turns.
Well, there are actually 3, technically. There are 10, they call them turns, but they're really rounds.
Yeah.
You go to 10 rounds, or someone can win through a bunch of other ways. He won by getting 20 points first, by basically having control of Europe. Which is another way you can win.
You gave him Europe?
I know, which is honestly really bad. I learned my lesson right away. I shouldn't have done that.
I say that without knowing anything about the game and how difficult or easy or anything that is.
Yeah, but it's definitely a weird one to get your head around because there are so many choices and the different ways you can spend points. It's kind of hard to know which things are the best to do at which times. The game I kind of thought it reminded me of, which is such a strange comparison, but
Monopoly.
Almost. It was the Star Wars Risk, the new one, in the sense that you decide where do you want to spend your time. Which battles do you want to win? Exactly. There's like multiple different, there's also a space race track, which is a separate thing, and you spend a card to do that.
So how do I go nuclear?
It's very easy. Every time you do a coup on a place, the DEFCON level degrades, and if it hits 1 on your turn, you lose. There are cards that will affect that as well, so that's a whole other thing. It's extremely well thought out from a historical perspective. Like, it's really cool just reading all the events, and I wish more historical eras, I guess, had a game like this, because it is a cool thing. I guess the Cold War is also kind of it's not as they call it's a Cold War, right? So it's not like, I mean, there's plenty of World War II games, but it doesn't have the same intensity or like potential to offend people by being like, you know, a slavery game or something like that. It's do you know what I'm trying to say?
I do, but I do think everything in history always has that. But I do think what the Cold War brings while everything had events in all through history, the whole thing with the Cold War, I think, is first of all we're much closer time-wise in an era when, you know, more newspapers are reporting on things and things like that. And when you're in a literal war, it might be a little bit harder for people to report on things. When in the Cold War, things would still happen, but then it'd be like, all right, is this because there's a Soviet spy involved? You know, is this part of someone who's from the blacklist? You know, so there's probably more events that are recorded that you could put into the cards. That'd be interesting. Like, I know I haven't played it yet, but there was a game, I think it was a Kickstarter? Can't remember. But it was about the Kennedy-Nixon election. And a lot of cards were, you know, because, you know, everyone gets really excited during the presidential election, so they report on everything involving them.
Right.
So, like, those would be event cards. It'd be like, you know, him going to a golf course or things like that. So
yeah, and I guess that's what I mean is that it's cool when it'd be nice to see games based on historical events that aren't just straight up wars. I know it's ironic because it is a war, but
it is,
you know
but
what
not
I mean?
yeah. You're not
just soldiers on a battlefield.
Not your first person shooters.
Yeah, more of either from a political standpoint or all that kind of stuff. It's very interesting and they did a great job.
Here's my question for you. Last I checked, this was number 1.
We checked. It's actually number 3 right now.
Oh, it's 3 now.
Or it's 2 or 3, I think.
Well, it held 1 for quite a long
Board
time.
Game Geek
Yes.
rankings. Yeah.
Do you feel? I know you need to play it a few times more, but do you think this could make it in your top 5?
I'll be completely honest. Based on one playthrough, no. I can. To me, it's more like it's almost like chess level, where I can see that the strategies that you can get into are so deep that I can fully understand why people love playing this game again and again, and it is certainly well made. And even if you're more like us, like for the theme players, that is still there.
I mean, we just spent like 5 minutes talking about.
Yeah, it's still really cool. I mean, it wouldn't make my top 5, but that's not to disparage the
right.
game.
And like I said, and you said too. I mean, it sounds like something we need to get, a few games to really.
You also have to take into account, this game it's at least 10 years old, I think, at this point. So it's, what the time period it came out in versus all the things that have come since.
What are the 2 things that finally knocked it?
Hard to compare. Number 1 is Pandemic Legacy, and I think number 2 or 3 is Star Wars Rebellion right now on Board Game Geek. But I think both of those are, well, at least Rebellion is a bit of a case of new hotness where people just like the new thing. Pandemic Legacy has been there for a while now, though. That's staying pretty strong. I don't know, but at any rate, Twilight Struggle, you've probably played it, so I'd love to hear you tell me what I was wrong about, that kind of a thing, why it's so awesome for you. I mean, it was great, but,
Well, now you can teach me.
Yeah, that's part of it. By the way, another thing we found is there were no. I want to make a how to play for it because there were no good ones. There were either Watch It Played didn't have one for Twilight Struggle, which surprised me. The other ones that were there were either like an hour long or it was a guy like rumbling.
Sounds like this may be a how to play and maybe a playback very soon.
That could be interesting. Yeah, it's definitely about one of those white whales of games. Much less White Whale. This is the other one that we played, which was a Kickstarter. Alf Siegert designed Heir to the Pharaoh, where one player is cats, one player is dogs.
This is one I do want to play because I do enjoy both species, but I am more of a dog person. I do more of a cat person, so I feel like it's a perfect.
It's pretty good, and you're fighting over control of Egypt, and essentially.
Really, I thought it was ancient Japan.
You'd think that, but you'd be wrong. This was pretty unique there is a board and you're placing things on it, but not your characters. You don't have cats and dogs, and you do not ever directly go on the board. Instead, it's really a bidding game. So at the beginning of each round, there are 6 gods, and you're each going to be bidding with a deck of 10 cards, 1 through 10. And you just put 1 card face down, flip, higher card takes the god, and the gods are your actions.
Okay.
At the end of each bidding phase, you will trade cards that you spent. So if you use all your high cards, your opponent will have them next round. So there's a little bit of that, which changes the dynamic. And the gods will let you do different things, mainly placing monuments on the board and claiming them for either your side or, if you're your opponent's side, whatever, depending on which god you get as well. And at the end of the game, what the monuments are facing are what gets them points. So there's 3 different types of monuments, for instance, and like one of them's worth 3 points, 2 points, 1 point. So if whatever your guys are looking at gets you points based, that's the general gist of it. There's more, but it's boring to talk about. And then there's also a pyramid in the center of the board that you're going to be building, where every other turn there's like an extra special super bid, and if you win that, you claim a level of the pyramid, and whoever claims the majority of the pyramid gets a big point bonus at the end. And there's other ways to get points based on collecting shrine and monument cards. So it's another one where there's kind of multiple tracks that you can take.
So it sounds like it's a bidding game where you're not bidding to place your characters on a board as much as you're bidding for this building the city.
Yeah, you're really bidding on what you're able to be going to be doing that turn, and most of the things are towards city building. And sometimes you might want to just kind of forfeit a bid because you're like, well, I should save my good cards for next time when it's more important.
Right, and that way you also give your opponent worse cards.
Exactly. So it is strange because it is only 2 players.
And this one, Garrett won?
Garrett won this game as well, though it was closer than Twilight Struggle.
He only got half a euro.
It is only 2 players, but it's a bidding game. I can't think of any. Usually bidding, you think more players will be involved, but I think the fact that you switch your 2 decks is really what makes that work very well. And pretty fun theme, your cats and dogs. There's also magic cards I didn't mention.
Oh, from what set?
Clever. They're animal magic cards, and they will do things on your bidding, like you play them secretly, and it might be lowest card wins this round. But then your opponent knows you put a card face down, so they might be like, oh, I wonder if it's the low bid card. Maybe I should play a low card. There's head games you can play.
There should be some in there that are like the Goldine and Smash Brothers. They don't do anything.
That would be pretty good. There was one time where I played. I forget what happened. He played a card to swap our bids. Me not knowing that, only seeing that he played a card, figured, well, I'm probably going to lose this, so I just played my lowest card, and he took it, and I won. That was pretty good. So there's some fun stuff like that. There's also a variant in there that we didn't try, but I really want to, where if you play, each person has a curse card, and if you play that as your bid, then your opponent loses points based on what their bid was, and whoever's the most cursed at the end, you get a penalty. So it sort of discourages you from just playing your higher card even more. Mm-hmm. Anyway, it was a cool game. There's a fun 3D building aspect. The only thing that was weird about it to me is it really felt like a game that would be fun with 3 or 4 players. It wasn't designed for that at all. There's no variant rules for that. But I wish I could play it with more people because it felt like it would be a good party game with.
Well, definitely with the chaos during the bidding. If all of a sudden, like you put in, all of a sudden someone said, well, I'll do lowest. Well, I'll do switch, and then everyone just shuffles their cards all of a sudden.
Yeah, like, way more going on with that. So it'd be awesome if they made an expansion to do that, but I don't know if they would because
you have to buy the other core.
I guess so. It also confused me a little because I feel like you've probably run into this before, where Mine, it was like a special Kickstarter version, and it had 3D models of the buildings, and whereas the normal one just has cardboard on stands, but it had both in there. But the rules did not specify saying these are for your special ones. It didn't like tell me those were in there. So during setup, I was really confused trying to figure out what are these extra pieces for.
Well, yeah, I know for me it's definitely for like when I'm counting, I'm like, reading what's in the box, I'm like, okay, am I missing anything? Like, is it supposed to be added or is it replacing alternate artwork?
Yeah, exactly. That can be a little,
but yeah,
a little weird. But
yeah, any word from the Meeple Gallery?
Oh, no. There's no word from the Meeple Gallery this week. Leave your comments, and next week we'll, I'm sure, have some things from the Meeple Gallery. If you want to be heard on the subjects of the games we just discussed, the Thing game coming up.
And the other things.
All the other things, the new Star Wars games, tons of new things to talk about.
How Jonathan should not let Europe fallen under a communist regime.
Did you go to Free Comic Book Day? That's another thing you could do. Did you?
I did not. Did you?
No, I didn't either. But I'm sure there were some people who did that and maybe played some games in the shop that they went to. Leave a comment right here, or you could email us, rollforcrit@gmail.com. We're also on Twitter, @rollforcrit.
Also Facebook, Instagram. Within the Void, we just opened up there.
Yeah, Ancient Egypt.
Yeah.
We're down there building pyramids. And you can check out our website, rollforcrit.com, where we sell several board games and card games at great prices. Plus, you can find links to more news articles, all that kind of fun stuff. All our interviews are going up. Oh, and I should have mentioned this during the Kickstarter segment, but forgot. Aegis is relaunching on Kickstarter this week, and we did a brand new interview with the creator. So that's going to be on our channel probably at the same time that you're watching this. So look for that and back that game, because that game should be a lot of fun. Otherwise, that's it. Until next time, I'm Jonathan Estes.
I'm Will Keeler, and you have been watching the Roll for Grit podcast.